Hi everyone, this is Jake, Casey's husband. Casey puts a lot of time into making this podcast, but she's happy to do so because we know how helpful it is to so many of you. The other thing we know is that our Paradigm Shift program is the fastest, most effective, and most sustainable way to make progress parenting a PDA child or teen. If that's of interest, click the link in the show notes to join the program priority list. Then we'll reach out by email and invite you the next time Casey hosts a free live call about the program, which she does only for parents on the list. Enjoy the show.
Hi, and welcome to the At Peace Parents podcast. I'm Casey, and I'm here to empower you in your decision-making as a parent of a demand-avoidant child. My goal is to share insights that will generate aha moments and support your connection with your child. I'm a mom of two amazing little boys, one of whom is PDA, and I've worked with hundreds of parents just like you to teach them how to lead their child out of burnout and find the clarity, peace, and sense of community they need. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of the At Peace Parents podcast. I have a good friend and colleague here with me today to talk about your nervous systems as parents of PDA children and teens, and her name is Afshan Tafler. Welcome, Afshan.
Thank you so much, Casey. It's so wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to bring you to our audience. So for those of you listening, a little bit of background. Afshan and I have been working together, I think now 3 years. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah, so Afshan has really supported me to go deeper in my trauma processing and healing journey in the background of the work that I do on social media and with families in our program. So she is one of the main reasons I have been able to show up as a regulated human for all of you. And we have done a lot of work with havening together, which she's going to talk about a little bit, and internal family systems, and identifying particular encoded memories and sort of processing those in a trauma-informed way. So, welcome. I'm super excited.
Thank you. Me too. Yeah. I always love being here with you.
It's always the best. Let's just get started. Can you tell me what led to your work as a healer?
Okay, well, it's very interesting because I always knew that I wanted to help people, I think since I was very young. And so I always knew I would sort of end up on that path. And it's always been a natural part of my personality, like friends, with family. And then I ended up getting into coaching quite a few years back. And I initially did not want to do this work of helping mothers. But the universe brings you to, where you're meant to be. And so the universe sent me a lot of signs along the way with mentors telling me, you know what? I see you helping other mothers, as you help yourself, you'll help other mothers. And I was like, no way, because I'm not a good enough mother. And I feel like I'm not perfect and I have to be perfect in order to help other mothers, so that was part of the process of coming into this healing work of helping other mothers, was really being guided, by the universe, sending me signs, being asked to speak on these topics, and then parts of me sort of fighting it, and then finally coming to do this work. But the other part of it is really me going on this journey of how do I get out of survival? Like, I don't want to live this way. I don't want to have this life where I can't accept my child and I'm so hard on myself and I'm stuck in the trauma vortex. And so how do I heal, And I went searching, and through that search found and learned all of these modalities. And as I started to get a handle on things, that's when I felt more and more confident to bring this to moms. And so I don't see myself necessarily, I just want to mention this, I don't see myself necessarily as a healer because I'm not doing the healing work, but I provide the container and the space and the tools for my clients to access their own healing space within. And so that's where I feel like that's what I really love about this work is helping people to realize that you have all the power within you to heal yourself, and I'm just the guide helping you to bring you home to who you truly are so that you can help yourself.
Love it. Okay, so you mentioned the trauma vortex and sort of your own struggles with parenting. Do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Yeah. I forgot to mention that in my journey. So, yeah, so my situation is that my child is PDA autistic with OCD. So there, he is a more complex presentation, and he went from internalized PDA to more externalized around the age of 9. And things, before I feel like I had a better handle on things and I could handle things better. And then around 9 or 10, it was like this externalized presentation showed up, which then started to really, really challenge my nervous system. And he's 17 now, he just turned 17. So we went through a period of 6 years of quite a lot of intensity. He stopped going to school. I had to work through all of that, all the fears around that, and all the challenges around my nervous system. He became more violent. That was really hard. That started to trigger trauma that I didn't even know that I had. And so I had to work on finding that and healing that. And that took, quite a while to discover because it was pre-verbal trauma for me. And then the OCD, right? We went through the path of finding PDA and understanding PDA and feeling like, oh my God, this is my child. But then the OCD coming in and getting stronger complicated everything because the two approaches are so opposite. And so us really having to come home to ourselves, and coming back to being in my true self and regulated enough to find this creative path of this dance between PDA and OCD instead of feeling stuck in this place of like, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place always. And I'm always now feeling like I have no choice and feeling totally traumatized by it all. And so learning to be in that space of this severe discomfort and uncertainty and not knowing what to do, and then just moving through it with this dance of trial and error between OCD and PD, accommodating, but then not accommodating, and accommodating, not accommodating. Through that, that journey, we were able to sort of figure things out. And, I did a lot of work on myself. And as, I did that work on myself, my husband also got on the path and started doing that work on himself, that we really started to, my son started to come around and we started seeing more shifts and changes. But, it's not the end of the story for us. My son still doesn't go to school. He doesn't want anything to do with learning. He still struggles with OCD. So I'm still, in the thick of the challenges, but the way I see it all is it's like night and day from before, it's like more from a thriving lens than from just a surviving lens. Yeah.
So we both work with a lot of parents of PDA children, but from slightly different angles, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear about what you like most about working with parents. Do you just work with mothers, or do you also work with fathers?
I have worked with fathers, but I mostly just work with mothers. Yeah. That's where my passion lies. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you like most about working with mothers of high needs / PDA children and teens?
Okay, well, there's a lot I like about working with mothers. I feel like there's just so much resonance between the experience that, we've been through. We understand each other, we get each other. I think that's the number one thing I hear from moms. They say, like, you just get what I'm going through. You put words to what I'm feeling and what I'm going through that no one ever has. And so I love that. I love the resonance that we feel. And it makes parts of me feel like I belong, so I get that belonging aspect that I don't get in my real world, that I don't have people in my world who actually go through the same things. So that's been really nice, and that's been really healing for my system. And I just love seeing, the courage. Like, the mothers I work with are so determined, they are doing and trying everything to help their kids. And so, the biggest reward is when I see that they they're making these changes and they're feeling more empowered and they're helping themselves and their kids, that's the biggest reward for me, because I know that as they're changing their systems, this affects their kids, and then they see that, and then this is really helping to create a ripple effect and change the world. So, one person at a time, they work on themselves and it creates a ripple effect. And that's sort of my contribution to helping to change all of, the sort of dysfunctional ways of the world, by helping one person at a time. So that's been really rewarding for me to see that.
Yeah. What patterns have you noticed in terms of what healing needs to happen among these mothers? And what modalities have you found most helpful?
Okay, so if it's okay, we'll talk about the patterns first.
Yeah.
And then what healing needs to happen, and then the modalities. So in terms of the patterns, a lot of moms come to me with, stuck in survival, right? So they're stuck in this place of like, I'm doing everything possible. I'm trying to accommodate my child. I'm trying to do all the things, but my nervous system is still reacting. And so their nervous systems are often stuck in these patterns of trying to control and fix still. And even though, from everything that they've learned, they don't want to be that way, the nervous system is still automatically reacting in that way. And then stuck in these patterns of hypervigilance and not able to truly rest, and stuck in doing mode, and, stuck in a place of feeling like they're failing and they're doing everything wrong, which then keeps them stuck in, going and doing mode in order to feel like they can do something that makes them feel good, because whatever they're doing with their child is not working necessarily. So, stuck in basically this pattern of survival, which is going between sympathetic fight flight and freeze and shut down, right? So those are the patterns that moms come to me kind of stuck in and wanting to work on. And those are the patterns that require healing. And really underneath all of that is this deep survival-based conditioning and programming on how we all as parents learn to feel safe, lovable, belonging, and successful in the world. And now our kids who defy all of those learnings with their behavioral responses, defy all of those learnings, and they trigger that within us. And so the healing work, is really to change all of those deep survival patterns and conditioning that keep us stuck reacting to our children. And it's all centered around, how did I learn to feel safe? How did I learn to feel loved? How did I learn to feel accepted and worthy, right? And our kids, we tend to feel so like powerless. If we can't change our kids, we feel so powerless, and then we feel like we're failing, right? So all that conditioning, our kids are basically telling us and guiding us to, this is what you need to heal so that you can fully love yourself within this circumstance, and then fully love me, right? Unconditional love. That's ultimately what we all want to get to. And so the healing work, in order for that to happen, the deeper healing work is really understanding that you are not this mind or body. You are the awareness of it. And can you learn to be with? Can you learn to be with the reaction coming up within you? And when you can do that, then you can bring healing to your own system. And that's, the deeper work that our kids are leading us to come to really learn who we are authentically. Like, we're not broken, we're not failing, we're not, bad and wrong because our child behaves in this way, or even because we react in this way. We're none of those things. We're this awareness within. We're love within. That's who we truly are. And so how can we start showing up that way for ourselves? By showing up for our nervous systems, and then showing up that way for our children. So it's deep healing work, and it's not easy. That's sort of the layers of work to be done in this. And it really becomes part I believe, part of our purpose. If you are a parent of a PD autistic child, this is part of your perfect purpose, and I don't like to impose anything on anyone. This is your journey, and of course you need to come to that on your own, but that's what I truly believe, that all of us
Yeah.
parents are here to change and shift, these paradigms, and that's why you're doing the work you're doing as well. And then,
Yeah. Can I interject to
yeah,
ground something? So when you're talking about patterns and survival patterns that maybe were what kept someone going and alive and accepted and belonging as a child, teen, young adult, and then they have this kid and it sort of breaks that ability to do that. So like one pattern I see a lot in the work that I do, and I identify with this a lot, as you know, which is maybe what caused this mother to be successful, to belong, to get approval, was to not rock the boat, was to achieve, but not piss anyone off, right? To sort of be people pleasing and really focused on everyone being comfortable. And so when you have a PDA kid, you are often making decisions that ruffle feathers, like, why are you pulling this kid out of school? Or you're setting boundaries like, I can't come to this social event, and you're forced to change that survival pattern. But then you have these intense nervous system responses because you're like, I'm going to lose my tribe. I'm not going to be safe, right?
right. They're very strong,
Yeah.
those reactions
And
within.
so,
Yeah.
like, a lot of women that I've worked with who have PDA kids, and I have this too, when they first start setting boundaries or advocating for their kid or just even making choices that are more aligned for their family, they have panic. They have like painfully physical sensations, right? And so like that needs to be healed.
Yeah, and that's totally normal part of this process, right? Really, we want to normalize that as much as possible. That as you go down this path, you're going to be going down a path that you've never been down before. And it's going to feel so, foreign and uncertain and not aligned with what your survival system learned was truth. But what your survival system learned was truth is not actually truth. Your personal truth anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so how can you show up for that your survival system now that's scared? And it's really just young parts of you. If you look at it from a part perspective, it's young parts of you that are just really scared that they're going to be outcasted and ostracized from the tribe, and that you're not going to belong anymore, and then you'll be left all alone. And then also understanding from a neuroscience perspective that that's how our brain is designed, right? To make sure we belong so that we stay safe. But in this case, you can form a whole new sense of belonging as you're on this journey. And I think that's a really necessary part of it. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned parts work. So let's talk about the modalities that you use. And if you wouldn't mind breaking them down for us, like as if you're talking to someone who's never heard of any of it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the modalities I used are both mind and body based. Okay. So I feel like that's really important. In my journey, I started off with more mind based stuff, didn't get anywhere, then got
Like
to modalities.
therapy. Like
And talk therapy, exactly.
Yeah.
And didn't really get anywhere. Maybe got deeper insights, but didn't really heal what was reacting, in my body. Then got to more trauma reprocessing techniques that, like IFS, that helped me start to, repattern and reprocess what I took on from traumas of the past, which are
internal
beliefs.
family systems.
Yeah. And that's, internal family systems. Thank you. I need to talk about this in terms of nobody understands this. Okay. So yes, internal family systems. So that is a parts-based modality. We do incorporate some of the body in that, but it's a lot about meaning making and understand and working with a survival reaction that happens inside of you, working with it as a part of you and being in relationship with it. So IFS, internal family systems, believes we all have a true self, and then we have these parts of us that are our survival based reactions. Okay. And when we can work with it in relationship, so much healing can happen. Trauma happens in relationship, right? And then healing can happen in relationship. So when we can work with it in relationship and bring that healing in relationship to that part of us, then that part of us can what's called unburden the trauma and heal it. And then you no longer feel so taken over by that, belief system that you took on, or those emotions that got trapped when you experienced those traumatizing experiences when you were younger.
Can you give
So
an example from your own? You can use me as an example or you as an example of like, what does a part look like?
yeah, okay. So I'll use an example that I wrote about in an article that's gonna come up. So I was having this reaction, probably about a month ago or so to my son. We were sitting in his sensory tent and we were together and he was in so much agony and so much anxiety. And, I started to feel fear. Oh, is this always going to be this way? Is this ever going to change? I started to feel that fear and also the discomfort, like of wanting to escape that agony. Like, I don't want to be here. I can't wait till I have to leave. And, feeling that within. So that's a nervous system response from a body level. There's something coming up, getting triggered. Then I'm noticing like the thoughts I'm feeling. And then how I was with it later is as I went into it from a parts perspective, I noticed the body reaction. I noticed the thoughts coming up, and then I be in relationship with it. So I be with it and I act like it's a part of me. Okay. So I be with it and I say, I hear you and I feel your distress. Can you tell me, what you're feeling, what's going on? And then I start speaking to it and be in relationship with it, and my system calms down because now there's this healing space within me, my true self coming forth to be with this part of me. And then the image emerges of this part of me, and it's a 13-year-old part of me who had a really hard time, growing up, where there was a lot of like unsaid anger in the home, low grade anger and tension, and from my parents, and just me feeling that like I couldn't handle all of this, like it was nonstop and I couldn't get away from it. And then the learning, so there were the emotions trapped in that part of me, and then the learning that I took on was I need the people around me to be happy for me to feel happy and okay. And so that's the belief that got imprinted back then. And my whole life, like I'm living through that belief, that I need my son to be okay and my son to be happy and not in agony or anxiety or anger in order for me to be okay. But for my true self, I know that, it's happiness is an inside job. It doesn't matter how people are reacting around me. And so that started to, come forth and be more clear, because you gain clarity when you're in your true self. You gain perspective. You have compassion for this part of you. You gain creativity in how to solve problems. So that's the internal family systems approach of really being with that part of you and then helping them to heal from those traumatic imprints they took on. And there's a whole unburdening process we go through in that.
Like the 13-year-old with the 13.
With the 13-year-old. And then she has a new felt sense of, oh, I don't need, like, I can be happy even if they're unhappy. Oh, I didn't know that. Like, nobody taught me that, but now you're teaching me that. And yeah, like I want that, And then when I find that, that 13-year-old finds that quality within herself, oh, I have this happiness within. It was just covered up by that belief. But now that belief is gone, I can feel my own happiness, and it's okay if they're in distress. I can still be happy. I can still be okay. And so, this is the work that we do with our kids. They're in distress. They're going to be in distress. They're going through lots of different things, and they're going to keep going through lots of different things. But how can we be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really tough one.
Yeah.
Like, I'm imagining you in that sensory tent, and like, I've been in those moments with my kids when they're having a panic attack, and it's like the strongest drive to just want it to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the work in that moment is and then it can move on to the other kind of work that I do is, the somatic based work, the polyvagal, the nervous system work, and somatic experiencing, which I'm now in the process of doing that training. It's a 3-year long training, but using that modality in the moment of noticing, okay, this activation within, noticing the thoughts that are coming forth, and then being with it. And in that moment, just bringing compassion to it. I hear you. I'm with you. It's okay. We're safe. I'm here. And having just that internal mini dialogue, and then bringing the felt sense of safety, feeling my hand on my chest, feeling my body, being supported. I was lying down in the tent, so feeling my back supported. And then looking at my son, once I was regulated, just looking at him through the lens of, okay, he's having a hard time and I can be okay with this because I'm containing my own reaction within and giving it cues of safety. So now I can stay more present with my son. And then I was okay to get through that night and then come back to that situation later to really understand the deeper meaning that was being triggered underneath.
And that gave you the capacity, because this is a question I get a lot. So you were able to do that without dissociating or shutting down.
Yeah.
Right? Which is different than actually bringing yourself safety so that you can be with.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the past, like what I would do more of, and I don't say I don't do any of that now. At times I still do. And then I catch myself, and then as soon as I become aware. But what I've done in the past is would have sort of frozen that down and like had this whole sort of appeasing response come up. So I would have been in a bit of a functional freeze state with this activation happening underneath, and then me trying to like ignore it, push it down and push it away while trying to stay there for my child that way. Or I would have, dissociated more and started going away completely. So those are the common reactions I would have had in the past. But if I can become aware of what's happening, what's getting triggered in the present, and then be with it instead of taken over by it, then my system starts to regulate immediately, and I can be with this happening in me and be with that happening in my son at the same time.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
So you mentioned internal family systems, you mentioned somatic experiencing. Do you have other modalities that you found supportive of parents like us?
Yeah, so the polyvagal approach, which is the nervous system approach of really understanding, what state you're in, and then bringing tools, cues of safety in. So that's aligned with somatic experiencing and somatic-based tools. And then havening, which well. We worked on havening together. So havening is another modality I bring in, and that's psychosensory, so using both mind and body. And havening uses the modality of touch to help soothe the nervous system and soothe the amygdala while you're with a more, triggering experience in your body. So it's a mind and body based approach. You can use it to reprocess trauma, or you can just use it as a tool to calm the nervous system and help your amygdala, which is your threat, part of your threat detection center of your brain, and determines whether you go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, dissociation, all of those. So to help the amygdala to feel safe in the face of this challenge. And, touch, there's a lot of research on touch. We're all wired to feel safe with touch, but the right kind of touch for you, right? Because everyone's nervous system is different. So we use that modality of touch on the hands, the arms, and on the face to bring this feeling of safety to the body while we work through the meanings that the mind has taken on. And then, we can do it from a reprocessing perspective of trauma, or we can use it just to help the mind take on, a new meaning of what's happening in the present. Yeah. That's another great modality.
Can you give us an example of something that you haven on, like for the new meaning in your life?
Yeah. So I used to do this a lot. So what I would do is when I would feel activated by something with my child, I would ask myself, like, what am I believing about myself? What am I believing about him? So I'd get quiet and go inside and be with that. And if I was, seeing him, I'm trying to think of an example for myself right now in terms of what I would work on. Okay, so what I would do is I would tap into the activation I was having, and then I would bring it down with some sort of body-based modality or using havening touch, okay, to bring down the activation on how I felt towards my child. And then if I wanted to build in a new meaning, like he's not doing this to me, right? Or I'm not failing because of him, instead I want to see him as he's having a hard time and I can feel safe in the face of this. So then I would haven in, what if he's just having a hard time and I can feel safe in the face of this? What if? I'd use the what if to invite in the possibility for the amygdala to take on this new meaning of my son. Like him breaking things is not like something that is so, traumatic, right? Instead, it's like, okay, he's just having a hard time. If I can see it in that way, then I can come back to who I truly am and help him in that situation and help myself. So I would haven on things like that at night. I would haven on things like the next day. How do I want to show up in this situation with my child? What's the quality I want to bring in? Like, let's say I want to be more present. So I would haven on that. What if I can be present in the face of this? What if I could be present? I would go back to like thinking about a time where I was fully present. Let's say I was on the beach in Anguilla on this beautiful vacation we had one time, and I was like totally present to everything. And I would access that feeling of presence, and then I would borrow it and bring it in to imagining being with my son the next day with total presence in the face of whatever reaction he's having. So I would let my brain, with the safety of the touch in place, let my brain take on an experience of doing that in advance, so that then when the time came for him to have that reaction, I would, I was building in choice points, right? Instead of the choice only being going to survival response, I was building in the choice point of, oh, I can bring this aspect of presence. I don't have to do anything. I can just be, with this happening within me, with this happening within him. Yeah. So haven on things like that. Is that a good example? Yeah.
Yeah, no, great example. The what if I can be with this, or what if he's having a hard time, instead of, what if he's doing it on purpose and trying to ruin my life?
Yeah.
Which is a thought I think all of us sometimes have.
Right. And the survival system is going to think that, because our children's behaviors are a threat to our livelihood and the way we see what livelihood is. Yeah. Right. And it's really changing, like, what is livelihood? What is feeling fulfilled? What is being successful in life? It's changing it from being seen in this way to now like livelihood and feeling safe and feeling successful in life is me showing up with total presence and compassion for myself and my child. Yeah.
It's a countercultural way of looking at success and achievement and livelihood and all of those things, but such an important one.
Yeah, and it's really part of why we're having these experiences, what we're here to learn, right? Because that's how we change the world.
Yeah.
To become a better place, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, so do you work with a lot of neurodivergent or PDA parents themselves? Like parents who are also autistic or ADHD or PDA? Yeah,
so I have worked with quite a few parents who have ADHD, okay, and identify with ADHD. A few with autism. I work with many parents who, sort of feel like they could be autistic. So definitely, but not necessarily diagnosed. I have worked with PDA, but I don't have a lot of experience with PDA. But what I do have experience with is a lot of clients who, their brain does have that PDA, some features of PDA, right? Mm-hmm. And so really understanding how to work with a nervous system that needs a lot of choice, that needs to slow things down a lot. So not having any kind of agenda and it really needs to be empowered with choice all the time. So yeah, and not going too fast. Those are all my clients are in that sort of highly sensitive category. And so am I. So I'm not surprised that I attract clients like that.
No, absolutely. And I will say, like, although it's not one-on-one work, in our program, you have worked with a lot of parents who are PDA.
Yes, true.
In our group sessions.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you said allowing for a lot of choice, going slow.
Yeah, it's definitely a slower process.
Okay. Yeah. And how do you distinguish between, like, and this is something I always like question as well, of like, how much of this is trauma and how much of this is wiring that's genetic, and how do we distinguish between the overlap, or is there a need to establish a distinction? Like, how do you think about that?
It's a really, really good question. And we never really know until we go in and do the healing work. And so some symptoms of, PDA, or the way in which they're, like, the extremeness of them, right, can definitely be due to trauma, and some can be due to just wiring, but you don't really know. So you kind of just go in and work with whatever's challenging the person. And as you heal more and more, then you just notice, if the symptoms, whatever symptoms they're experiencing of distress, become less. So I don't want to make this about, like, it's definitely not about healing autism or healing the PDA, but it can be about healing the extreme stress responses around it and helping the person to become more understanding of what is, the deeper wiring of who they are, and then what is sort of the traumatic and chronic stress imprints that come in. And no one, like, everybody has trauma. There's nobody, right? Yeah. And I would argue that if you're a highly sensitive person, and not even argue, I think this is the reality. If you're a highly sensitive person, then you take on traumatic imprints more easily. And so you likely have more traumatic imprints. And then as you work on those, then you can sort of own who you really are, and then know, what is the symptom of chronic stress and trauma apart from who you are.
Yeah. Great. I'll leave it at that because it's a great answer. Okay. What were you going to say?
No, it can be a long process for some,
Yeah. Yeah.
Through that process and understanding, right? Like, even for myself, yeah.
I do know, because here we are still doing the work.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, as long as you're on this earth, the work never ends. Like, things get easier in certain ways, but it's also, like, really up to you to start to notice, up to all of us to really notice, okay, this is different than before. The brain will always only want to notice the bad stuff and keep noticing the bad. But then your true self comes forth and says, no, this is different than before, and I am healing, and there's new layers of things that come up. But as long as we're having the human experience, we're going to be dealing with a brain and body that's designed a certain way, and if you're autistic or PDA, you're dealing with a brain and body that's designed a certain way. But I think it's important to know that you can be the awareness of that and still help your system. And as long as you're on this earth, you're probably going to have some work to do. But ideally, it gets easier over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, last question, which is, I think, top of mind for a lot of parents of PDA children. And you've kind of spoken to it with your own experience, but I get asked this as well, which is it possible to heal while you're still in the trauma, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because a lot of the work that we did in the beginning, or that you seem to have done for yourself, it's like you're still getting triggered by the thing that was traumatizing while you're trying to heal it. So can you speak to that? Like, how is it possible? And I know in the trainings that you give in our program, you often talk about how much of it, what you're actually experiencing isn't necessarily the stimulus in front of you in terms of how much you're getting triggered. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is like it's a big question. So I'm gonna see how I can talk to it. So first of all, while you're living in a situation that can feel traumatic, that you can have healing within that situation. I want to say yes to that, you know? So like I question this a lot, okay? Because when you're living in a situation that's highly triggering, you can heal, but in my opinion, in my experience, it can take longer. And it can also take, for some people, depending on your nervous system, you know, when you have these external constraints, it can take changing your situation around a little bit to make it so that you have a little more space so that then you can feel safe enough to heal, right? But a big part of it, a big part of it is also changing our definition of healing. You know, can you heal within a traumatic situation? Well, what is healing to you right now? Is it that you're going to feel calm all the time? You're not going to get triggered at all? You know, I think a lot of us parents, we have these unrealistic expectations going into this healing work, and so did I, that your child is going to fully change and that if you heal, they're going to change. And so this is all like coming from that survival-based patterning of, you know, fixing and controlling because it's so hard to be with all of this. So healing to me is about showing up for yourself differently in the situation. That no matter how hard it is, the external constraints can be on the outside, can you show up for yourself differently from how you learned as a child, which is most of us learn not to show up for ourselves, right? So can we have a different experience in the present moment where we can show up for what's getting triggered inside of us, be with it, even if we can't change any of it. Okay, to me, that's big healing in
Yeah.
itself. Okay.
Can we do an example of like, and I'm happy to give one, but like, what would that look like for a parent? Because one of the things that you've taught me is like, it's not about never getting triggered. It's how you come back to your baseline. Like, are you coming back to your baseline? And that it's okay. Like, it's not a sign of not healing if you need another human to co-regulate you to get back to baseline, because that's the quickest way. And like when I was doing the earlier work with you, I felt like I was failing because I was still getting triggered and I wouldn't be able to self-regulate always. And I'd have to get support from Jake, my husband. And you were like, no, that's like the fastest way to come back to baseline. And it, like, in the same way that I help parents track, like, okay, how long are the meltdowns? How intense are they? How frequent are they? It's kind of the same concept for the parent, right? Like, not to say it's a meltdown, but just like we all get triggered. Like, there's none of us.
So it's not about not getting triggered.
Yeah.
Over time, it's about getting triggered less and less as you do the deeper healing work and deconditioning yourself and deprogramming yourself, right? And your nervous system, helping yourself feel safe in the face of all of this and helping yourself feel safe, lovable, worthy, belonging, successful, all of that in the face of this. So ultimately, you know, it over time, yes, you want to get triggered less and less, but it's not about never getting triggered. It's about getting triggered, but showing up for yourself differently in the face of your triggering. So instead of going into survival patterns, or maybe you go into them and then realize and have the awareness, can you bring yourself back? Okay, so in the heated moments, ideally you can do that more and more. Can you bring yourself back to presence, to a place that you can help yourself feel safe in the face of what's going on, okay? And then the other part of it is not getting, having your nervous system not being stuck cycling between fight, flight, freeze, and shutdown, fight, flight, freeze, and shutdown all the time. So more and more, can you build the pathway back to presence, ventral vagal, safety, calm, relaxed, alert, and feeling safe being in that place and deeply resting, you know? So it's about changing these deep-seated patterns that didn't start with our kids, you know? And I guarantee to everyone that these patterns didn't start with our kids, these survival patterns. They just got exacerbated by our kids, that they now it feels so unlivable. So healing when you're in a traumatic situation. The other thing I just want to name is that, you know, trauma is not about what actually happens. It's about how the nervous system perceives it. So over time, if you can help your nervous system to feel safe in the face of whatever's going on, then you won't feel that trapped. No, you don't drop to that trapped and I have no choice and this is inescapable place, which then inputs the traumatic imprints and creates that chronic stress load. So over time, that's part of the deeper work. But I think healing is not about not getting triggered anymore and being calm all the time. So I want to really make that clear. It's about you get triggered and you know how to work with it and you have a very predictable way of you develop this predictable way of bringing yourself back to safety. And even if you can't in the triggering moments with your child, can you do it afterwards? And that is healing. Because the reality is sometimes we can't bring ourselves to safety when a child is being very violent. We'll freeze or we'll cycle between freezing, I don't know what to do, and feeling like, what do I do? And then going to then rage or getting really angry with them or trying to restrain them or something, to create safety. Or, trying to escape, having a flight response, going to a room, locking yourself. Sometimes that is necessary.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It doesn't mean you're failing and that you're not healing. But the key is, can you help yourself more and more in the moments and help yourself more and more after those moments to come back. It's about coming back.
Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. Not staying stuck. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, my friend. Well, do you have any final pieces of advice or words of wisdom for our parents listening?
Yes, and it's the one that I think is the most important, to really understand that you are not this brain and body, okay? And you are having this human experience and with a brain and body that's become conditioned and that feels very threatened by your child's behaviors. And so if you can pan back and really see that, the bigger picture and the learning is for you to learn about who you truly are within this whole experience. And that's what your child is really guiding to you, and what then becomes the greatest gift in this whole experience, that you learn who you truly are. You learn your true power. You learn your ability to have choice in the hardest of circumstances. You learn your ability to see things differently, and to feel empowered and to know that even if life is hard and it's challenging, that you can be okay. But that comes first with really understanding that you are not this brain and body, and you can help this brain and body to feel safe.
Love it. All right, Afshan, thank you so much. It was so awesome to have you, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Thank you too. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you. I'll see you soon.
Thanks everyone for being here with me at the At Peace Parents podcast. This is your source for all things related to understanding, supporting, accommodating, and advocating for your PDA child. To go deeper on any of these topics, check out my course offerings and masterclasses at the website www.atpeaceparents.com. To completely transform the way you think about and relate to your child and to bring peace and stability to your home, join us for the next cohort of the Paradigm Shift program.